Review for Tucker, The Man in His Dream, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. So this is an interesting one. I've never heard of this movie, but I was watching a podcast about Francis Ford Coppola. It's called Two Guys and a Gal Talking About Movies, and they kind of go through different directors or actors or actresses or what have you. It's Cosmo Creative TV. That's the YouTube channel. But anyways, is pretty interesting podcast, and they both really were fans of this movie, and I've never heard of it, but so I decided to check it out. It's based on the true story of Preston Tucker, the maverick car designer, and his ill-fated challenge to the auto industry with his revolutionary car concept. So Jeff Bridges plays Preston Tucker. Apparently, this is something that Coppola had wanted to make for years. And he was finally able to do it. And he even worked with the family of the man, because unfortunately, after the movie ends, he dies about 6 years later. The movie doesn't get into this, but from an illness. So he had died pretty young, actually, unfortunately. He seemed like a very smart individual. Salt of the earth kind of like American story of a guy just out of sheer will wanted to build better cars than they were offering. So basically he designs this thing called the Tucker Torpedo. It's a beautiful car. It's rear engine. It even has a third headlight in the front, which he wanted the fenders to move so that you're like turning the car right, and then the lights will turn right. So, but his engineer says basically like you can't do that. It's too dangerous. But then he makes it so that the center light will move with the steering wheel. So that's a good car design. Yeah, he wants a rear engine. The big three don't want to do that. He says every car should be rear engine, which is actually true because it will handle better. Especially if they're all rear wheel drive, so the engine will be like right on top of the rear axle, and it just makes the car much more balanced, which is why Porsches are rear engine, the new Corvette's rear engine. But he's doing this in the late 40s. And then basically the big three kind of get wind of what he's doing. They get afraid that this will be crazy successful because it is going to be successful. He got funding. Like over 50,000 people became shareholders. He raised millions that way. He was able to get the government to lease him. I think it was the largest factory in the world, and they weren't using it anymore because the war was over. So he got that, and he started to build the Tuckers. Now, this is all spoilers too. I mean, the movie came out in 1988, but I like the movie. I like Jeff Bridges. I like how Coppola directs it. I think you can really tell this is a story he really cared about. But I like the movie, so check it out. It's like 2 hours long. It's very well done, I would say. I mean, if anything, I wish it was even longer because there's even more stuff going on, like in the 40s. Like apparently he worked for the Ford Corporation. He was a cop. And they show him as a cop in like a picture. But going back to his innovation, he was a cop and he was in his cruiser and he was like gonna freeze to death because it was so cold. So he took a blowtorch and cut a hole in the dashboard so the engine would be like right there. And the heat of the engine could just go right onto you, you know. So maybe saved his life, but then he got fired because he got fired for altering a police vehicle. And apparently he got fired twice because he actually joined the police force when he was like 17, and they found out he was too young, so they fired him. Then years later he rejoined and they fired him again. Um, so this is a guy, when he gets an idea in his head, you just can't stop him, which I can respect. So he's creating this corporation. He has a large family. His wife is Joanne Allen. She's very good in this. Frederick Forrest, Elias Cotier, a young Elias Cotier is very good. Young Christian Slater is his son, Junior. Mako, who was in Conan the Barbarian, 7 Years in Tibet, Conan the Destroyer. He's been in a lot of stuff. But then he meets up with Martin Landau, who's very good in this movie also. In fact, what was he nominated? But yeah, he's very good. And yeah, he was nominated for an Oscar for this. Nice. 1989 nominee, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Tucker. And he won for Ed Wood. Let's see if this was nominated for... It keeps wanting to do Chris Tucker. No, I like Chris Tucker, but no, the movie Tucker. I don't know. But I'm not sure it made that much money. Its budget says it was 22 to 24 million. Academy War Awards. Best Supporting Actor nominated. Best Art Direction nominated. Best Costume Design nominated. Okay. So no Francis Ford Coppola direction, but yeah, he meets up with Martin Landau, who has money, and he invests money in it. And he says to him, well, you're going to have to get stockholders, and you're going to want a board that has some people that are from the auto industry so they know what they're doing. He does that. And in the end, this kind of, bites him because he has these high dreams of all these things he wants in the car, and then they're like, no, we can't afford it. There's a shortage on steel. They even want to get rid of the rear engine thing, which he's like, puts his foot down and says that he will not do that, which I don't blame him, because it's like, you advertise this car and then it doesn't even have a rear engine. I mean, that's one of the main things about it. So you have that going on, and then also this movie kind of gets into government corruption, and I'm not sure if the whole movie's correct, but it seems believable to me. There's a senator who is his big three donors are the big three, and they're donating money to him. He gets wind of this. He doesn't like it. Tucker even says in a sales promotion thing that he thinks the people that run the big three should be in prison because they won't make their cars safer. They won't add seatbelts, which this car has standard seatbelts. Which, yeah, back then there weren't seatbelts in cars standard. Kind of crazy, but yeah, he's like, they could add that. It doesn't even cost that much, but he's like, but they don't care about that. They only care about profits. So you could definitely see like the small man, David versus Goliath kind of thing going on. And I think he makes some good points. Because it's like they're just afraid that he is making a better car than they do. And it's like, well, too bad, make a better car. Martin Landau, I think, at one point in the movie says to him, "You made too good of a car." And then Jeff Bridges is like, "Well, isn't that the point?" So so yeah, and then this all comes up to a head when the SEC starts investigating him. And then they charge him with a bunch of felonies, and there's a court case at the end. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I think Coppola, I think, directs it very well. There's, I'm not sure if it's split screen. I don't think so, but there's a number of shots of him on the phone with someone else. Like one with Martin Landau, and he's in like a diner, and it's like raining in the background. And then Tucker is in his car factory. Uh, that was a cool shot. What I think they did is they just built the car factory, and then they built a small diner on the side, and then they just had the shot with the wall in between. Thought that was cool. There's other times when he's talking to his wife, Joanne Allen, and then her face is like half the screen, and then where he is the other half of the screen. I think that's done with a split screen, or whatever you call it, a split lens, which Brian De Palma does a lot. So, but I really like the way it's shot. It's very innovative. Um, like I was watching an interview with Coppola. This is also produced by George Lucas, who's a longtime friend of his. I think it's a Lucasfilm production, and he was heavily involved in the movie too. And he's in a documentary with Coppola, and Coppola was saying, well, he's like, when I shoot a movie, I like to film it kind of in the essence of the movie. Like I wanted innovative filmmaking with this because it's about Tucker, this innovative genius. If I'm doing a war movie, the same in The Godfather. So it's interesting. But yeah, the movie's got a great look. I can see why it was nominated. Nice late 40s clothing, snazzy clothing. Beautiful women in beautiful dresses, and beautiful cars. I mean, it definitely is a looker. Like Coppola said, when he saw it as a little kid, he thought it looked more like a spaceship. Um, and Francis Ford Coppola said he actually there's a moment in the movie where they have like dozens of their cars outside of the factory, and they're driving them through, and they invited like hundreds of people. Then like 1,000 or 2,000 showed up, as a promotion for the car. And Francis Ford Coppola said that he was there with his family because they actually lived only like, you know, I don't know, like 20, 30 miles away or whatever, in a small town. And his dad was interested in the car, and his dad even, I think, put a down payment on the car when it and then when it was finished, then he would go pick up the car and pay for the rest of it, which unfortunately never happened, he said. But so yeah, even as a little kid, he was there, and maybe he shook the hand of Preston Tucker. I don't know, but so I thought that was cool. It's a personally connected to Coppola, and he says he's wanted to make the story ever since, and it definitely is a good story about yeah, but big corporations versus small corporations, how these corporations can worm their way into politics, and through donations and all these other ways, which I won't really get into, but it is a big problem in our country, and it's unfortunate, but this is a good movie to kind of highlight that, I think. And besides that, it's a fun movie. Jeff Bridges is great in it, very charismatic. Um, like I really like that. Like they made like 47 cars, and they had to June 1st or around there to make 50, because that's what he promised he'd do. And then the government shut down everything. They took all their funding, but like a couple hundred of his most loyal workers and engineers were like, well, we'll just work for free, and then we'll finish the last three cars, which they did. And then they all drove them out to the courthouse where he's being trying to be federally convicted, and then he has them all parked out there. And then there's a scene in the movie where he gives his closing argument, not his lawyer, and then he says, because he's being charged for fraud, like he never made these cars, and he's like, Your Honor, can the jury just walk over to the window and look and see all the cars that I made? Because you're charging me with fraud, and this isn't fraud. I made the cars. And then he's like in a month we would be making, I think he said 100 a day off the line. So boom, like within a month you would have thousands of cars, but they just wouldn't let him build them though. So it's too bad. He was a threat to the automobile industry. I think it would have been good for the big three to have to innovate more, because there's even a line in the movie where someone makes a joke that we'll be buying our cars from our former enemies, like Japan and Germany. And then someone laughs, and then he laughs, and he's like, well, I don't think that's going to happen. But that is what happened, right? Like, Japan makes a lot of great vehicles, and, Germany too, but those are more expensive, but still, Germany, Japan both make, great vehicles. So that's a pretty funny line. But maybe if the big three were forced to innovate more before that, maybe that would have happened to a lesser extent. Who knows? But yeah, it's just a nice movie. Martin Landau in an interview talks about how his character, who it's revealed later was an ex-con, and that he was really ashamed of that because he tried to, it was like bank fraud or something, and he did like 3 years in jail. So he's a felon. He's really ashamed of that, and he never really had a family. And then throughout this movie, he becomes closer to Jeff Bridges' family. He even starts buying like the daughter's dresses, and the sons, he'd buy him, like baseball caps and stuff like that. So, like Martin Landau in an interview was saying, at the beginning of the movie, he's dead inside, but by the end, he's full of life again. So I thought that was nice. But he definitely gives a great performance. I could see why he was nominated. Like, I mean, Jeff Bridges, I think maybe should have been, but I don't know of the year. I know that Roger Ebert criticized the movie because it's like you don't learn about the personal life of Tucker, or you don't learn about his like motivation really. He's just kind of this larger than life figure. Yeah, I guess I could see that complaint, but um and there also is Howard Hughes is in the movie, and he basically just calls Tucker and says he wants to meet with him. He meets with him and Christian Slater, his son, Tucker's son, and he just says, he's like, so the big three are after you in the government, huh? And he's like, yep. He's like, well, same here. He's like, they want me to appear in front of some Senate committee, or he's like, otherwise I go to jail. Can you believe that? And they just kind of like relating to each other. And then Howard Hughes is like, so I hear you need steel and maybe a new engine, because the other engine they had wasn't really working. And he's like, yeah. And he tells them about this helicopter plant in New York, I think, that he could just swoop in and buy it pretty cheap. And there's a bunch of engines that will fit in his car, and tons of steel. So that was kind of nice. I wonder if that's true, that Howard Hughes actually helped them out, because Howard Hughes is like, I think I like this guy. Like, just pure sheer will, salesmanship and innovation. and that's something that Howard Hughes could definitely respect. So yeah, that was a nice scene. But um, but yeah, and then he takes those helicopter engines and he kind of changes them a little bit, puts them in the car. They work really well. Car's very fast, handles pretty good, even gets decent gas mileage for the time. So um, yeah, it seemed like a pretty good car. Let's see. Okay, so Roger Ebert gave it 2.5 stars out of 4. I think his complaint is you just never got that close to him, which is somewhat true, yeah. Tucker does not probe the inner recesses of Preston Tucker, is not curious about what really makes him tick, does not find any weaknesses, and blames his problems not on his own knack for self-destruction, but on workings of a conspiracy. Well, I guess, but what if what if it was true though? And it makes the press into a convenient and hostile villain. This won't do. If we're offered a movie named Tucker, the man in his dreams, we leave feeling cheated if we only get the dream. Yeah. So he just thought it was okay, I think. But and there was 51 Tuckers that were made. Now they're worth like millions of dollars apparently each. Of the 51 Tuckers ever made, George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola each own 2. Jeff Bridges were cufflinks owned by the real Preston Tucker. So, just some trivia. Oh, well, Francis Ford Coppola offered Jack Nicholson the role of Tucker. I think Bridges is better for it though. So I think that's about it. But at the end of the movie, it says although only 50 Tuckers were ever produced, 46 of them are still roadworthy and in use today. Tucker's innovations of aerodynamics, styling, padded dashboards, pop-up windows, seatbelts, fuel injection, and disc brace were slowly adapted by Detroit and are found in the cars you are driving now. Preston Tucker died of an illness 6 years after the trial, but his ideas will live forever. Yeah, and he was found not guilty also. So, but yeah, that's about it. You got to give it to the guy. He's trying to make a faster, better handling, safer car. So it's a good story. Check it out. Tucker, directed by Coppola. So, and if you could do me a favor and smash that like button, that'd be great. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you next time.